Hello, Tina. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you, Mark, as always.
Okay, so welcome to anybody joining us online for our video conversation around the 52 financial biblical keys that Tina has been developing, thinking through, and we are holding a space for conversation at regular intervals at the present time. So do connect in with us, do make comments and share your thoughts. Testimonies are really welcome,
Yeah,
things that
definitely.
you're doing in your life around these things. And today we're on key 33, working hard and avoiding sloth and laziness. We've just had a little debate, haven't we, about how do you pronounce sloth? But I'm assured that sloth is the right way to pronounce it. So working hard and avoiding sloth and laziness.
Yes,
This is a real key, isn't it? This is really kind of challenging area for us.
it is. I think it's a bit of a hot topic as well. Well, I say hot topic, certainly a sensitive topic. Not many people speak about it, and I think that's because they want to stay popular. I'm not bothered about that. I'm more bothered about preaching what the word says. So I'm happy to take the bull by the horns where necessary. So yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that it is one of those subjects that we have a tendency to avoid addressing, isn't it? And
Yeah,
that says something, doesn't it?
it does. I think it's particular to Britain. I don't know if it's the same, but I also think we need to be careful. We do need to be careful. We don't engender feelings of anger and frustration at people, because people cannot do things for various reasons.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure the topic we're talking about today is laziness and sloth. Not fear, for example. We can't be bullying people who are fearful about doing things. So I think we need to be careful to a degree, but I do think it needs to be addressed and articulated, really. And it's not something I've ever heard preached in the church, if I'm honest.
That's
Never.
right.
So
preach it, Tina. Preach it.
Preach it, sister. Well, as I was thinking about it, the first verse that came to mind was Colossians 3:23, which says, "Whatever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord and not to men." Some translations say wholeheartedly, but it means serve whoever it is you're serving. Whatever you're doing, put 100% in, as if it's the Lord himself you're serving. And I've always loved that verse, and I'm a great believer in that verse. I think there are occasions when we can make the mistake of thinking we're serving God when we're actually serving men. So we need to be careful about that. But I think it's about not doing a half job, and making sure that we fully fulfill what's expected of us when we're doing something. And I was just listening this morning again to another scripture that was where the Lord was saying, you'll be rewarded according to your works. And I was reminded of the story where, one man said when he was asked if he could work in the vineyard, "Yeah, I'll come," and then he didn't. And the other one said, "No, I'm not going to come," and he did. Well, the one who got the reward was the one who went, because our words and our actions do have to marry up. But if we haven't got them both, then best our actions speak louder than words, as pretty much St. Francis of Assisi was trying to demonstrate with his life. It's the actions that count. And a couple more verses for you. So 2 Thessalonians 3, verses 10 to 14 in the Passion Translation, which I have a bit of a soft spot for, because it puts it in proper vernacular, really, the kind of common usage that we're using at the moment. And Paul says this to the church in Thessalonica. He said, "For when we were with you, we instructed you with these words, Anyone who does not want to work for a living should go hungry. Ooh.
Wow.
Now we hear rumors that some of you are being lazy and neglecting to work, that these people are not busy, but busybodies. So with the authority of the Lord Jesus Christ, we order them to go back to work in an orderly fashion and exhort them to earn their own living. Brothers and sisters, don't ever weary in doing what is right. Take special note of anyone who won't obey what we've written and stay away from them so that they would be ashamed and get turned around. So it's not just about bringing shame. It's about seeing things turn around. I'm going to be talking about that a little bit more in the next one as well. You know, again, that's the hot topic bit, isn't it? I personally think everyone, unless they're in a hospital bed, and even then they can do something, they can listen, for example, everyone can do something to add value to somebody else.
Yeah.
I'm a great believer in that. And if someone is just listening and being an encourager, I mean, I've known many people who were disabled, couldn't leave home, were stuck in one room, didn't have use of their legs, but you know what? They were fantastic intercessors.
Yeah.
Or they were great at ringing people up and encouraging them who were otherwise on their own. You know, there's always something we can do. And I think to think that we can't do anything is almost denying God.
Yeah.
I think this is the fundamental issue. And I want to read, if I can find it, Hebrews 12. I think it is verse 11. Let me just look that up. Yeah, this is where it says in the New King James, no chastening seems to be joyful for the present. Well, I think it'd be fair to say nobody likes being told off. I mean, what a weird way of putting it, but painful. Nevertheless, afterward, it yields a peaceable fruit of righteousness to those who've been trained by it. Let's look that up in the Passion Translation, for example. So let's Hebrews 12, verse 11. Let's see what it says in that one. Now, all discipline seems to be painful at the time, yet later it will produce a transformation of character, bringing a harvest of righteousness and peace to those who yield to it. That is the crux, really, of what this particular key is about.
Yeah.
Really, if we are not hard workers, if we're not wholehearted in how we work, we have a spiritual problem. We may think it's a physical one, it isn't, because the battle is in the mind. And it's, you know, it's the age-old battle between pain and pleasure. You either play now and pay later, or pay now and play later, as they say. Now, I realized one of these, I've shared it before, I'm sure, one of these things I remember is I realized that because I like to eat, I'm always going to be washing up till the day I die, I'm going to be washing up. I doubt I'm going to be someone who's going to have lots of servants doing it for me, put it that way. So and I hated washing up. And so I've always thought to myself, how can I make it more pleasant? How can I make doing the jobs I don't like more pleasant? Now, the spiritual answer is to pray or sing or praise the Lord while you're doing it. That's the spiritual answer. I will put something on, either on an audio or a video, so that I can work while I work physically while I'm listening to something else that's either just going to feel like playtime, or it will just it'll give me some kind of fruitfulness, some kind of harvest in my heart. So Jasper and I, most days we try and get to the gym to work out because I'm trying to get fitter. I have spent a lot of my adult life not as fit as I could be. Partly that's because I did exactly what most doctors said, which was only swim, but exercise. Well, you lose all your muscle unless you're doing 100 lengths a day, which I was not. And so I'm trying to build my muscle up, and I'm doing what the Lord said, which was go to the gym. So I'm going. But, you know, I hate all that pounding on a treadmill. I hate just pedaling on a bicycle with all the, you know, television and rubbish in the background. I hate it. So what I do is I put a Christian message on in the background, and Jasper's got one ear of it. I've got the other. I've got his blank ear pod in the other ear, and he's got the other blank ear pod in his ear. And we listen to something spiritually upbuilding while we're physically working out. We found a way to have where we're making the pain less painful and making the pleasure more positive. And I think that when we are working hard, it's because we've discovered a revelation that actually yes, it will be uncomfortable to exercise discipline now, but it will yield a harvest of righteousness. So, for example, say my discomfort is the washing up. I love to see a tidy kitchen. Nothing gives me more pleasure. I will focus and I'll think, oh, isn't this looking clear and beautiful and tidy? But I never used to think that. I used to think, oh, I'll do anything to get away from the washing up. That was my mindset, but it was a lazy, slothful mindset. And so I had to train my mind to like the outcome, the harvest, as it were, of that discipline. And that's what Hebrews 12 is saying. We've got to train ourselves to look at the harvest that we're trying to achieve and to focus on that and realize it's not going to come just by floating into our lap one day. It's not going to drop into our lap. We've got to work for it, and we've got to work hard. I've never seen anyone produce a harvest of any kind without hard work. It's always going to require hard work. The question is, have you got what it takes to get on with it? Now, I have a lovely little phrase that I cheat with. I'll let you into my little cheat. Inch by inch, it's a cinch. By the yard, it's hard. So I'll just say, if my procrastination levels are high, I'll think, you know what, I'll just spend 5 minutes on each room having a quick tidy up. And I'll do what I can in 5 minutes and then focus on what it is that I think I need to be doing. So that's my little cheat example, just do a bit at a time. But actually, by the time you've done 5 minutes, you realize you've gone through 10 or 15 minutes, you've done the room and it's finished. And it's the same with anything the Lord asks us to do. If he says to do something, we want to do it with all of our heart. We don't want to be having this procrastination mindset because, where it seems quite harsh, where it says, if someone's not even willing to work to eat, there's something seriously wrong there.
Yeah.
There is. Because they think it's all going to come into their lap. But they've got to realize, actually, you have got gifts and abilities that add value to other people. And unless you're willing to share them and do them, why should you have the fruits of somebody else's labor when you haven't contributed? That's really what the verse is saying.
Yeah. It's very good, isn't it? That is. And so there's something about motivating ourselves, but in ways that are godly and healthy.
Yeah.
And so there's something of our capacity to be able to
absolutely
contribute to combating the kind of temptation of sloth and laziness. And it's a recognition that we all have tendencies in those directions.
Yes, absolutely. I spent a lot of my earlier life nursing, looking after older people who were disabled and couldn't move. And many of them felt like they had no value. Yeah. And I would say to them, you've got nurses come in here several times a day. Encourage them. Tell them what they're doing right.
Yeah.
Say something positive to make their day. There's lots of ways that you can add value to somebody to encourage them to produce a harvest of some kind, but do it. Don't belittle it. Oftentimes, the thoughts that come into our heads, we don't think that we ought to mention them. But if they're positive and somebody hearing that positive thing would encourage them, well, why not mention it?
Yeah.
If I'm thinking to myself, oh, I like those earrings, I've trained myself to say it out loud, I like your earrings.
Yeah.
Or, I love the way you did that. Or didn't she put that well? Just not to build up flattery, but to encourage, because that may be the only positive thing that person has that day.
Yeah.
And so, Jesus, you don't see him doing anything half-heartedly. everything he does was above and beyond what people expected. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think so.
He exceeded everybody's expectations.
Yeah. There is a kind of another side to the whole thing about laziness, which is that sometimes people work too hard and go the other way, don't they? And so there's something about kind of making sure that we, in a sense, don't get addicted to the hard-working, being motivated by what you achieve. And so that links in with this whole thing about we're doing it to serve God. That's the key thing.
I think it's all about the focus then, and we're going to be looking at that in the next point. But the focus is, because Mary and Martha are the best example of this, aren't they? They both did what they did wholeheartedly. The difference was one was focused on Jesus.
Yeah.
The other was focused on work for Jesus. And when it says, whatever you do, do it as if you're doing it to the Lord, that's not saying put an overemphasis on work. Work should be done so that it's effective, so that it gives you the fruitful outcome.
Yeah.
But I'm a great believer in working 2/3 of a day and resting 1/3. I remember my bishop saying that when I was first ordained. Work 2/3 of a day and have 1/3 off. And if you've got a day off, make sure you've got the evening off and the morning off after your day off. I can't say I've always managed to do that, I'll be honest. And I think it's harder and harder for many people who are pastors or clergy. But if we have a Sabbath rhythm and we're carrying that Sabbath rest, as it were, with us, then it's going to be much easier not to get into works of righteousness, because we're not saved by works of righteousness. Our works are an outward sign of an inward reality, aren't they? It's like, I've done something in my heart, and now I've got this huge passion to tell everybody. I can't keep quiet about it, and it doesn't feel like work. I often say, when I'm in the workplace and I'm doing some training with leaders, I'll say to people when they're saying about how they're not enjoying work or they're not enjoying their job, I say, find a job you like, and you'll never have to work, that 4-letter word, a day in your life. Find a job you like, and you'll never have to work a day in your life. And I think that there's something in that actually when we are saved, when we are born again, there's something that we would even be willing to get out of bed for that doesn't feel like work to us. It's a joy. So in the middle of the night, God will give me a revelation on something, and I get my phone out and I'm doing some research on it, and it doesn't feel like work. It feels like play. But I'm doing it with all of my heart because it comes from Him. And we're going to be touching on this in the next session. This is why these two are together, really, because the reason people are getting into sloth and laziness is their focus is all wrong.
Yeah.
And that's why it says don't have anything to do with people, or at least don't hang around with those people, because it's their mindset is infectious. And the mindset is that I can work myself into a better place. The reality is you can't. But what you do it wholeheartedly. Shine, in other words, shine at it. Put everything you've got into it when you do it. And then you'll have a harvest, and a harvest of righteousness if your focus is on the Lord.
Yeah.
That's the key thing, I think.
That's great. Well, this is a first time that I've ever had a conversation around this, and you're right. We should actually speak about these things more and examine these things much more, because it's absolutely key.
It is.
So I hope people who've been listening in and who will listen in at a later date have found this helpful and encouraging. Do continue to share testimonies and put comments on and things like that. We'd love to read those.
Yeah, we would indeed.
Thanks very much, Tina.
That's all right. I'll see you shortly.
See you soon.